Hi, and thank you for tuning into this video. If you're new, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah. I basically just make show and tell videos about the jewelry I've got in my Etsy store, the stationery things I do in my other Etsy store, and I like to talk about my thoughts and feelings and stories from my life while I draw abstract pictures. If you're not new, thank you for coming back. It's funny, I've been watching so many crafty videos lately. I mentioned this in my last video, but I have gone down like a YouTube rabbit hole of junk journals and Happy Mail stuff and other kinds of paper crafts. And it's kind of like my childhood self has found basically has found my other calling. So besides making crystal and gemstone jewelry, my new obsession is making stuff out of paper, making little books out of paper, writing letters by hand and decorating them with collaged elements and stuff. I mean, I've shown you pages of my journal in the past, and I'm not gonna, I mean, it's personal, right? I don't make it to show you in YouTube videos, so I'm not going to do a flip through of that or anything, but I've always naturally loved to decorate the stuff that I have, meaning my journals, my notebooks, my sketchbooks, obviously. I think it's something that just naturally a certain personality type does. When I was at the Emily Carr University of Art in Vancouver, one of the things that I loved to do the most with my classmates was like go for coffee or go for a beer and just flip through each other's sketchbooks. And it was kind of like an informal show and tell. And that to me was the best way you can get to know another person is by seeing the stuff that they create just for themselves, not the stuff they create for a grade in the classroom, or the stuff that they create to make money at the end of the year school sale, or the stuff that they create to exhibit and be prestigious, or get the accolades or the praise of the art community. But the sketchbook stuff, like what somebody finds inspiring at the core of their being, like what they put on paper to create a record for their future selves, to look back on and see what they did. Or, when you have a crazy dream, so you write down the details of that dream. That's the stuff I live for. And I think that the reason I'm able to keep doing these kinds of YouTube videos is that I made a decision somewhere around a year ago, I think, after making a bunch of interview videos and expose videos talking about the bad experiences I had in the cult that shall not be named. I kind of made a decision when I was at that point on the fence of debating, should I just delete my YouTube channel and live my best life, or should I keep making YouTube videos but restructure the format? Like, my old videos, for those of you who don't know, were extremely preachy. Like, I was totally to the level of mind fucked, like brainwashed by this fraudulent self-styled Swami from India who claimed to be an incarnation of Shiva. And if you've never been brainwashed, congratulations. But if you have been, like if you've ever followed a charismatic leader or believed in like a crazy out there religious idea, you'll know that it happens really gradually. Like when you first get drawn to a movement or drawn to a personality, it's because there are qualities within that movement or within that personality that you aspire to. So like in my case, I've been a very strict vegan since the age of 13. I'm passionate about animal rights. So when I saw a discourse by this charismatic, arguably charismatic, some people think he's just a big dumb goof, which I agree with now, but he has a very compelling, authoritative way of speaking that really draws you in if you don't know any better. So when I heard him give discourses about how, it's his life mission to revive the ancient Vedic appreciation for animals and compassion for animals, and to basically destroy the modern farm system, the modern, I don't even like the word farm, the modern, what would you call it? Prison camps where animals are raised under the most brutal, horrific conditions and then slaughtered for food. When he said that it was part of his mission to make that obsolete, to help human consciousness evolve beyond the enslavement of non-human animals, that was the hook that drew me in. Anyway, long story short, I'm not going to make this video another what I experienced in the cult video. If you're interested in that, I've already basically said everything I have to say in my previous videos. But what I wanted to say is that once I was hooked and really, fell hard into just blindly believing anything else this man said, a sort of like a very arrogant quality of know-it-allness awakened in me, or was planted in me, where because I believed so vehemently in everything he said, I had no conception of a possibility that maybe other people's opinions are also valid, or maybe I could be wrong about him, or that maybe he's not as great as he boasts and claims to be from the golden throne on which he sat. So in those videos, when I talk about stuff, and I hate seeing those videos now, that's why I deleted them all from my channel, but the way that I spoke was very preachy. And I am not a preachy person, guys. Like, I'm one of the most casual people you could ever sit down and chat with, because I really have this quality of being fascinated by life and by other people's stories and other people's experiences. And so I was at that turning point in my life about a year ago, after I exposed that cult, where I was feeling like I don't want to have a platform anymore where, people follow me and I tell them what to do or what to think or how to be, because that's basically what the cult-driven mind strives for. It strives to assimilate. It's like the Borg on Star Trek. And yes, I know my nerd is showing here, but it's kind of like when you believe something really strongly and you're told that the only hope for humanity is if you make other people believe what you believe, you turn into a missionary. Like, whether you're Christian or any other mythological, belief system, like whether you're a Heaven's Gate hail bop enthusiast who thinks that you have to kill yourself to ride the tail of a comet to enlightenment, or whether you're a Mormon or like whatever, if you believe that your belief is the only belief, you're gonna be like a theological Nazi. So anyway, I was so disturbed by how somebody was able to corrupt my mind and turn me basically into a cult recruiter that I almost deleted this YouTube channel. And then I kind of made a decision that, well, there might be people who are also interested in the stuff I'm interested in, like abstract art and crystal and gemstone jewelry, and having a good discussion about things that we think about that, I can just change directions here and just start sharing openly and from the heart. And I'm glad I did that. However, I'm still getting the occasional, it's rarer now, but there are still people who comment on my videos asking me to talk about the cult leader I used to follow. That's why I'm getting this over with right now at the beginning of the video, so I can move on to stuff I actually want to talk about with you. But yeah, people still ask me to talk about that cult leader, ask me to comment on, the whereabouts of other prominent members of that cult, or ask me to talk more about my experiences there. And it's kind of like, when you've moved on from something in your life that you feel was negative, like when you've gotten through a turbulent patch, the more you dwell on that negative, turbulent past and keep rehashing the stuff that you went through there, and keep talking about it and talking about it, it just keeps you locked in that mentality of being a failure or being a victim. Like right before I turned on the camera to start filming this video, I read through the comments on my last video just to see if there are, if any questions or conversation points I want to pick up on. And somebody had commented that I should maybe publish some of my old videos, but with a heading that this is a warning, like this is what can happen to you if you let your mind fall into a cult. Like basically show them as like a what not to do, or as a worst case scenario, like this is what can happen to a person when they're in a cult. And it's not that it was a mean comment. I could tell it was coming from somebody who felt like there's a lesson here for others. Like, if you see a car accident on the highway and it's on a certain corner that doesn't have a proper traffic light, in the future, you'll be really freaking careful when you're turning at that corner, because an accident can happen there. But it really started to make me mad that, my life isn't, I don't see myself as an example of a worst case scenario of what can happen to a person, or as as a learn from my mistakes kind of a character. I kind of think of myself as a happy ending life story. Not that my life is over, but even though some of the worst things that can happen to a human mind happened to me, or I let myself fall into, or however you want to see it, the strength of my own convictions was enough that I was able to pull myself out of that horror show. And that's why I think it's more important to make videos sharing why I left the cult, which is already up there on my YouTube channel, so don't ask me to talk about that. I already did. But that's why I think those are the more important videos. I think if we keep looking at what we wish we hadn't done, we'll keep regretting it. We'll keep stewing about it. We'll keep thinking, where would I be in my life right now if I had done this instead of that? And you know what? Those kinds of thoughts are so useless, because we can't go back in time and do something differently. We can't unsee what we once saw. We can't undo our mistakes, but we can learn from them, and we can avoid falling into similar traps in the future. Anyway, enough pontificating about this. I think I'd rather do my show and tell now. But just that was my very long-winded reply to all the people asking me to talk more about the cult that I was once in. I politely decline your request. I will not, at least for now. I have it on the back burner that maybe one day I'll write kind of an autobiographical account of my time in the cult, like from maybe the year before, and how I was kind of visiting different leaders. Like I saw a Buddhist Rinpoche talk at the Vancouver Buddhist Association that a friend of mine invited me to. I went to a Sikh temple. I was listening to a lot of Bashar videos. Like basically the year leading up to my recruitment into that cult, I was pretty much like shopping around for a guru. I was, I looked up Osho thinking if he was still alive, I'd go follow him, and dodged one bullet because obviously I discovered that he had left his body. He had died decades earlier. I had this book that I found at a secondhand bookstore called Star Signs by Linda Goodman, a very famous American astrologer. But after reading that book cover to cover that I had bought at a secondhand bookstore, I Googled Linda Goodman, thinking maybe I'll reach out and see if she's taking students. And of course, she had also died decades earlier. So it's kind of like the first couple of teachers I looked into had already passed away. And so I had this like yearning sort of a feeling that I had to find a living enlightened master, right? So when I stumbled into the fraud who called himself Nityananda into his center in Vancouver, one of the first things I saw was a poster of his face that said, Living Enlightened Master, which is what I had thought I was looking for. So anyway, it's it's definitely a lesson learned, and there is something people can gain, I think, from hearing about my past experiences, but not anything that would be worth republishing those deleted videos. Nobody needs to see an arrogant person babbling bullshit. Like that's not going to be helpful. Have you guys seen any of Leah Remini's exposés about Scientology? If you haven't, you've probably been living under a rock or else like deliberately avoiding them. But I remember there was a documentary I saw about last year when I was first really, no, I guess a year and a half ago now, when I was first really plotting how I was going to publicly expose that cult and bracing myself for the onslaught of character attacks that I knew they would hurl my way after I spoke out against them, which, I mean, you can prepare yourself for it mentally, but until people start making up the most atrocious, disgusting, disturbing, incredible lies about you, you can never really be quite sure how far they're gonna take it. It's a trip. Anyway, this documentary I saw about Scientology, it played a few excerpts of interviews with Leah Remini back when she was still a full-on brainwashed Scientologist. And she was saying things like, L. Ron Hubbard gave humanity a path to follow in order to clear ourselves and the planet. Like she's preaching that insane jargon that you would hear from any brainwashed Scientologist. And the interviewer, I think it was on something like I don't want to say it was on 60 Minutes or The View or whatever, but it was one of those mainstream kind of investigative reporting shows. Not that The View was investigative journalism, but you know what I mean. Mainstream American show. So the interviewer played that back to Leah Remini as she is today, like out of that mental fog and back into reality, and asked her point blank, how can we believe the things you're saying about Scientology now, so insistently, when back then you were saying that so insistently? And it boiled my blood. Like I felt mad for her that the interviewer dared to ask such a question, because it's like if somebody is in a physically abusive relationship, I've seen this comparison made by psychologists who analyze the cult brain. If somebody's in an abusive relationship, but they are being manipulated and controlled by that physically aggressive partner, they will deny it. They'll make up excuses for their bruises. They'll say, "Oh, I had an accident," or "He's not that bad," or "He's gonna change." And it's not because they believe that. It's because they feel like they have to say that in order to survive, in order to avoid being further abused. And if you hear members of cults praise their cult leader, or praise the formula they're following, or praise the hell of a life they're living, you can kind of see that glazed look in their eyes. You can tell that what they're saying isn't coming from their heart. It's coming from their survival instinct. And it's kind of shocking to me to see that there are interviewers out there who would interview somebody like Leah and not be able to see that difference in her before and after. Like when she was talking about Scientology as a brainwashed person versus now when she's talking about it as a free thinking, self sovereign human being. Like, how can they not see that difference? Anyway, like, I don't even want to say let me know how you feel about this in the comments below, because this is totally not the direction I meant to take this video. I think these videos give you guys an insight into how my mind jumps from topic to topic. Like when I'm not filming, this is how I'm thinking. Like shit gets mixed and mangled, and I think that's why I have to be a self-employed person who makes jewelry and makes art and does creative things, because if I try to confine myself into one stream of awareness, it's like an imprisonment. I remember in school, you can probably, everybody can relate to this, I think, that when you're in school and the teacher is lecturing about something that you know is going to be useless in your future, like how many of you have used a graph calculator in your day-to-day life? Like unless you've gone into something like architecture or finances or whatever, some mathy kind of a profession. Like I would sit there in math class and I would just know that I'm not going to be dividing fractions in my future. And so it kind of felt like mental torture. Like I would rather be thinking about abstract art compositions or sitting at home playing the piano, or I would rather be doing anything else but that. Anyway, back to the point. I finally restocked some Moldavite jewelry in my Etsy shop. I wanted to show you this first and foremost so you guys kind of get first dibs. Moldavite is, I would say it's my all-time favorite gemstone. It's the glassy green one here that is the world's only gem quality form of tektite, which means it's formed by meteoric impact. So when a meteorite smashes into the ground on Earth, there's debate in the geological community as to whether or not Moldavite is that extraterrestrial material, like if it is made of meteorite, or if it's just glass that's formed by the heat, like when the sand melts on impact, if it's like an earthly material transformed by the meteorite's fire, or whether it's a fusion of both. And whatever it is, to me, it's just incredible and amazing. Like no matter what, whether it's the extraterrestrial material fused with earthly material, or whether it's earthly material transformed by the fire of that extraterrestrial material burning through the atmosphere, like no matter what, it's magical shit. I'm gonna leave it at that. But yeah, these pieces, there's a men's bracelet with Moldavite and black tektite, also formed by meteoric impact, obsidian, which is formed by volcanic eruption, little Herkimer quartz diamonds. They're quartz crystal that naturally forms like a diamond. This one here is my favorite of all the Herkimer diamonds because it's got that double formation, what they call a twin crystal. And I love this one specifically because it almost looks like it's shaped like a heart, like the two top points, or the 2 points on this side of the crystal kind of fuse together and share a point at the bottom of the crystal. I just think that's beautiful. It kind of symbolizes like that inner duality, that inner creative and organizational self coming together, that left brain, right brain. I've heard people say that it represents the masculine and feminine coming together. However you want to see it, I just love those kinds of twin crystals. Anyway, my other little nerdy share of the day is that I feel like I should be pushing up some broken glasses held together by tape and talking with the list. Like I just made some stickers. But yeah, I did. I made some stickers. I found some of my favorite crystal images and kind of edited them a bit and turned them into these stunning stickers. I just love them. These are in my newer Etsy shop, which is called Art of Gems Stationery. And yeah, I printed them out on vinyl paper, so they are waterproof. I don't think the ink is waterproof. They're just printed on an inkjet printer, but it's extremely sticky. So like when you put it down, it's a permanent adhesion. And I love this one here. It's a carved Moldavite in the shape of a meditating Buddha, and I just love that. By the way, Jacqueline, spoiler alert, don't buy any of these. You'll know why soon. Anyway, oh yeah, and here's some washi tape. If I'm ever putting my sketchbook down on this journal to do a draw with me video, and there's like random stuff stuck down, it's probably because that's an item in my new Etsy shop, and I put it in my journal to take a demo photo, which is exactly the case about that piece right there. This set, I just love this set. I bought it. My mom is really into peacocks. And it happened really gradually. It's not like she's always been super into peacocks. How funny, as I'm talking about that, the first thing that I put down on the paper has kind of like a peacock tail vibe to it, right? But no, my mom just loves the way peacocks look. And I do too, for that matter. Like it's the most beautiful natural color combination, I think. Where that rich royal blue and the purple and the turquoise and the green all kind of come together. So I bought a set of, I think I paid too much money for them, but I bought a really fancy set of washi tapes with, you know, peacocks. I'll hold it up closer. See that? It's gilded. It's got that beautiful peacock with like a Japanese village scene and just those luscious colors, my mom's favorite colors. I ordered it kind of preemptively thinking about her birthday, which it passed and they hadn't arrived yet. And so now I'm thinking Christmas to wrap gifts using it, just to take it to that next level. And then, okay, here's an interesting topic we can talk about, like, which is Christmas. As you probably already gathered by my referral to Christianity as mythological, I am not a Christian. I do not believe in that story or that patriarchal, misogynistic religiosity. Like, that is not a worldview I ascribe to. I think it's outdated and silly, and I'm really sorry, because I know there are people who are Christian who watch this video. I see those comments in the comment section, kindly or not so kindly, asking the sinners to repent, and you know, especially on the video I made about witchcraft. But yeah, I'm not a Christian, but I love the Yuletide season. And I mean, I mentioned this in my Halloween video too, that a lot of the holidays that we think of as Christian were actually pagan festivals. And I think the modern celebration of Christmas is a prime example of that. There's no historical correlation whatsoever between December 25th and the birth date of the character people call Jesus. Like, if he existed, I think I saw a documentary about this once, and I don't want to air my ignorance in this video by bullshitting or falsely remembering. So I'm not going to tell you when I think the actual birthday of that character was, because I don't remember, but they basically said he was probably born in springtime, not in the winter, and that the early Christian church had chosen the date of December 25th because the pagan population they were trying to convert was already having like the festival celebration at that time, burning the Yule log, decorating their places with candles, celebrating the shortest day of the year, which means that the light is coming back again. So anyway, the whole thing about a Christmas tree and hanging your stocking over the fireplace and all of that beautiful, fun, maybe commercialized stuff. I love that stuff. I love culture. I love customs. I love traditions. I love family gatherings. I love making a vegan feast with tofurkey and cranberry sauce. And anyway, so yeah, this is my way of saying if I had to pick a religion, I still lean the most strongly towards Hinduism, but not even really that in an organized way. You know, it's more like those are the deities to whom I feel the strongest connection and who I admire the most of all the deities in the world. So yeah, that would still be my chosen path. I did like, people had asked in the comments of my last video for me to talk about Diwali, and I apologize, I didn't really feel like making a video at that time or about Diwali specifically. So to answer the question of how I celebrated it, I lit some lamps here in my place. I always use coconut oil instead of ghee because, again, vegan. Yeah, and I found a nice little screensaver image of a beautiful Rangoli design. Rangoli is that really cool geometrically symmetrical sand painting stuff. Actually, not sand. It looks like Buddhist sand art. But Rangoli, it's designs that they make in front of homes or in front of temples and doorways in India. I think more in the villages as a custom. Using colored rice flour. And it's pretty cool because the impermanence of the design means that they have to change it every day. And if you watch the Indian women do this, it is like they've got it down to a fine art. Like they pinch the colored rice sand in their fingers, and they can make lines almost as thin as the lines from my pen. I'm just pouring that rice flour on the ground. It's gorgeous. Google it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Rangoli. 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 If you're trying to Google it and then you're like, what the fuck did she call that thing? Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, yeah, so I love Diwali. I love all holidays. I love Halloween. I love Christmas, even though, again, not from a really religious perspective. And where was I going with that? Oh yeah, that pretty peacock looking washi tape that I bought to use for wrapping those gifts. It's funny, I really think sometimes when we sit down to do abstract art like this, like when we decide to start drawing without a planned composition or a direction in mind of where the art should go, I kind of think it takes on the qualities of our inner space. So as I'm talking about a peacock, and maybe it's just me, but I'm kind of seeing a peacockish image kind of emerging here. Not really. Maybe if I painted it in those colors. It's interesting. I love that about abstract art. If you're in a really purely meditative space, like when I draw like this and I'm not talking on the camera, usually I do it in total silence. Like sometimes I'll have music on in the background. Other times I do it in silence. I'm going to see if I can find an example to show you. This was done, I think, in my last video. Here's one that I did just on my own without talking. And it always has little details emerge that, you know, each one looks like it could be something or could symbolize something. My favorite are always the archways. anytime I see an arch, it feels like it's an invitation to enter into something, whether it's a new realm or a new state of consciousness. Whenever I have a little form with a ball on top of it or a circle on top of it, I always take it as being kind of figurative, almost representing a person. Yeah, maybe I've just got peacocks on my mind because I'm talking about my mom, because now I'm seeing what looks like peacock feathers here and here. Anyway, it's funny. But yeah, here's an example of one that I did in a video. And it's way more cartoony, simplistic, less detailed, less perfected. What I mean by less perfected is like this line here. Normally, if I were to do something like that, I would strive to have the edge rounded in an aesthetically pleasing way. I always strive for perfection. I'm like a perfectionist in my abstract art. And that's kind of a silly thing because abstract art isn't supposed to be any specific way or isn't supposed to look like any specific thing. But if I'm putting a straight line, I strive to make it as straight as possible. If I have a number of parallel forms, I want them to be as close as possible to reflective of each other. I like elements of symmetry in the asymmetrical. Anyway. Yeah, just so you can see, when I'm not talking on camera, I think my drawings have a higher level of sophistication to them. But when I am talking on camera as I draw, like I'm doing right now, I think that's kind of fun too, because the conversation gets permanently inscribed or imbued in the art. So yeah, oh, I should show you. So I've been thinking of what to get my mom for Christmas. And she's basically the only person I really have to think about because I'm an only child. She's a single parent, so there's no siblings, there's no dad. My grandma has told all of us years ago that she's got enough stuff already, and if she wants something, she buys it for herself, so not to get her stuff because she doesn't want any more clutter. And I mean, I still get her stuff, but it's not the same as, like in my mom's case, she and I, from the time I was a kid, we would always have gifts for each other under the Christmas tree in her place, and we would always stuff each other's stockings. Like I would take her stocking down to my bedroom and fill it with whatever little trinkets I found for her that I bought with my allowance money when I was little. And when I moved out, like I didn't just move out of my mom's house to another place in my city. Like I moved to Vancouver when I was 20. And yeah, I think, yeah, when I would come back to visit for Christmas, I would still find a way to get her stocking and sneak it down to my bedroom and fill it with whatever I had bought for her in Vancouver. And now, yeah, last year was actually the first year that I was a grown-up woman living in my own place, but in my hometown. It was so weird because my entire adult life I've lived away from my hometown. Like it's so weird being back in my hometown, but not in a family house in my own place. It's kind of like worlds are colliding, as George Costanza on Seinfeld would say. Like my at-home Sarah is combined with my adult living on her own Sarah. It's very interesting. So yeah, last year it was my first year living in my hometown but not with my mom. And so what I did was the last time we got together before Christmas, I took her stocking and I brought it to my apartment. And that way I could fill it with goodies. And then on Christmas Day when I went over, I just brought it with me and hung it back up again when she was out of the room. So yeah, we have this thing with stocking stuffers. I'll tell you what I got her last year. Okay, last year, and it's so surreal to think back to what we were doing last year at this time, not just for me, but I think for all of us, because it was pre-pandemic. So we could still freely go out and do things and get together with people, have big family gatherings and big parties and no masks. It was so much fun, right? The pre-pandemic world. So last year, my mom really spoiled me with our local discount movie theater that kind of plays movies once they've already left the main cinemas. 6 months after a movie has been released, they would get it. So it's called the Movie Mill. It's like a little discount theater. They did the coolest thing ever, if you're a nerd like me. They did 6 weeks in a row. They did every Wednesday they would show a different Hobbit / Lord of the Rings movie. So first they showed the Hobbit #1, and then the next week the second Hobbit, then the third week the third Hobbit, then the week after that the first Lord of the Rings movie. Anyway, so you get the idea. It was a Lord of the Rings marathon. So one of the gifts my mom gave me was pre-Christmas. This started in November. She took me to all the Hobbit and all the Lord of the Rings movies. And yeah, it totally made me feel like a little kid again, because it fell right into the time of year of Christmas / my birthday, which is in December. I think that's part of the other reason I've always loved this season so much. It's double the celebration when you've got a December birthday, that it's Christmas and your birthday happen together. And I've heard some kids hate it because they feel like it gets lost in the mix. But personally, I loved it because it just made it even more fun. Anyway, so last year, to commemorate that awesome movie marathon that we had 6 weeks in a row, I found her a Lord of the Rings, I think it's pronounced Evenstar or Evenstar, the elvish amulet. And yeah, I found a really cool sterling silver version of that and wrapped it up and put it under, I think it was the very last thing in the stocking. So after all the other stuff, vegan chocolate bars, there was the Evenstar. And yeah, and then this year I was struggling to think of what to get her. And then she told me recently that she doesn't want anything. Basically, don't get me anything this year for Christmas. It's similar to what my grandma told all of us years ago, which is that she doesn't need anything, she doesn't want anything, she's got enough stuff already, so no more stuff. And I took that as a challenge. Okay, I'm not going to buy her anything, because specifically she said don't buy her anything. So I've been thinking, instead of buying her stuff, I'm going to make her something. And I wasn't sure what, because I've already given her so many bracelets, gemstone bracelets, the ones I always wear that I sell in my Etsy shop, that she's told me no more bracelets. She's got one of each color, so plenty to mix and match, something to go with every outfit. So, okay, it can't be a bracelet. And she's not like me. She's not artsy, craftsy. She wouldn't use a journal, so it's not like I could make her a junk journal. It would just sit there. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to think of what to give her. And then last week, she surprised me, because when I went over, we have dinner every Sunday together. So last week, when I was over for dinner, she told me she had dug out some of her old deepams from India, old lamps, and that she had lit them on Diwali. And she has a beautiful picture of Lakshmi that I gave her, that I had bought in one of the Lakshmi temples in India. And it was so cool. She told me that throughout the year, whenever she gets a good financial news, like whenever her investments are gaining interest, or um, when things kind of bounced back after the crash earlier into the pandemic. She even said, like, whenever I get a good sale in my Etsy shop, which is so cute. This is the kind of proud, supportive mom she is. She tracks my Etsy sales just so she can see how my shop is doing. She said, whenever I get a good sale, she thanks Lakshmi. And I think that's just so cool because I do that. Like, whenever I finish drawing a beautiful picture, if I really like how something turned out, I thank Saraswati, the goddess of creativity. Um, Whenever I've got a roadblock or a creative block, I ask Ganesha to remove that for me. He is the remover of obstacles. And I just think it's so cool that my mom does that too. And neither of us have ever really told each other that we do these things. And like I said, this is what I mean about how I choose Hinduism. Hinduism is the path for me. It is the religion I feel the most devotional towards. But not in a follow the leader kind of a way. Like, I would never look for a guru again because, you know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me kind of a thing. I'm not going to fall into that trap again of trusting another human being before I trust my own intuition and my own personal connection. But I follow Hinduism more from a sense of my personal connection with the deities. And if you don't believe in them, it might sound silly to you, but if you understand where I'm coming from, it just feels good to have someone to give your gratitude to. It's kind of like a lot of people will say that if you thank a deity for something, it's like you're giving away your power, or you're giving away your free will, or you're giving away your personal achievement. Like, if you draw something beautiful, don't thank Saraswati for it. Like, thank your creative impulse. Anyway, I get that too. I totally understand that. But it's kind of like this. If I thank Saraswati for giving me a good intellectual idea or a good creative idea, it's not to say, you did this through me. You're the supreme and I'm just a piece of human shit groveling at your feet begging for a crumb or a scrap. It's not that. It's not that kind of a surrender or a self-effacing devotion. It's more like seeing her as the emblem of feminine divine creativity from time immemorial, who people have gone to for artistic inspiration, helps me feel connected to the lineage or the sisterhood of all the artists who have ever come before me. And what a beautiful, blessed thing it is to be a part of that cycle happening on Earth, where ideas are constantly happening and art is constantly evolving and people are constantly creating. And it's like, well, thank you, Saraswati, for allowing me to be a part of this flow. Or if I get a good sale on Etsy, yes, I know it's because my SEO is good. I do my titles and tags and descriptions carefully, and I make my jewelry to a high standard I hold for myself of quality and using good materials. I know Lakshmi didn't do that for me. I did the work. But again, thanking her when I get a good sale, it's just nice to, when you feel grateful for something, it's nice to express that out loud. And Lakshmi as an embodiment or as a symbol of generosity and material affluence and abundance. Again, it's not saying to her, I'm just a poor beggar and you are, a wealth personified. Please give me. It's more like saying, wow, you are blessing my life. Thank you. Anyway, I hope that's making sense. So when my mom told me this, I immediately thought of a pendant that I made. Here's a pendant I made earlier in the year to go in my Etsy shop. too bad that, well, no, I won't say it's too bad. It's nice that the sunlight is now streaming in. I forgot to close my drapes to avoid the harsh glare when I'm filming. Um, but it's nice. It's illuminating her here. I think of this piece as like a coming together of the Hindu temple jewelry that I absolutely loved. It's the artistry of the Indian craftsman is unparalleled on earth. I really feel that India has mastered the art of jewelry in a way that is superior to any other world culture. Yeah, the goldsmiths, the silversmiths, each different tribe having its own aesthetic flair. Like, I could do a 5-hour video just talking about all the different jewelry of India. I think I showed you my big chonky book of Indian jewelry techniques and traditions. Anyway, that's a whole other rabbit hole I'm not going down right now. But basically, my two jewelry passions are Indian temple jewelry and crystal healing. And you don't really see the two together out there because India, other than the Navaratnas, the 9 gems that symbolize the different visible planetary bodies that rule the Vedic astrology system of thinking, other than those Navaratnas, crystal healing has never really caught on. At least not in the Vedic India. I know there are people in India now who do crystal healing. What I'm talking about is like the established jewelry tradition of the culture doesn't really include the same plethora of gemstones used around the world. Like if you look at European jewelry, there was different birthstones for each month. Semi-precious stones were used as much as precious stones. In India, you see more just the standard ruby, emerald, diamond, sardonyx, the stones that represent the planets. So anyway, with me, I love stones like this aquamarine, blue apatite, this is green fluorite. So I kind of felt like fusing those two passions of mine together and kind of creating something of my own by combining them, which is like a piece using natural gemstones and also sacred Indian temple jewelry. So anyhow, once I learned last week that my mom still thanks Lakshmi whenever there's a little financial boon, I decided to make one for her, but using the peacock colors, which are her favorite colors. So using kind of a brighter green fluorite and a deep purple amethyst. Oh, doesn't that look like a pomegranate seed? Only purple instead of red. You know how pomegranate seeds are shaped like this and they're kind of white where they attach to the fruit? Anyway. And the blue apatite. So this is what I'm making since my mom specified not to buy her anything this year and no more bracelets. So I'm going to make her a necklace out of this. I just have to turn it into a pendant. I think I'm going to find a really deep blue stone to put on the cap, like maybe iolite or tanzanite, and then just string it on a simple chain. So yeah, that's my other show and tell for today's video. Maybe let me know in the comments, what are you getting do you celebrate Christmas? Do you have a Christmas tree and stockings? And do you send Christmas cards and do all that fun stuff? Who's on your shopping list? Obviously not if they also watch my videos because you don't want to spoil it in the comments. I'm safe to talk about anything I get for any of my relatives here because none of them watch my videos. I would actually kind of feel awkward. One of my cousins watched my video about why I'm vegan, and that was pretty cool. That was really cool actually, because it's something I take for granted. I just assume people know why another person would make an ethical decision to abstain from products of cruelty. But yeah, he came up to me once at my grandparents' house when we were having a big family dinner, and he said, "Yeah, by the way, Sarah, like, thank you for making that video about why you're vegan because I didn't realize that that's how animals are treated, or that this is how you came to that realization." And it really deepened our friendship as cousins. But when I make videos like this, where I'm all over the place and talking about all kinds of random stuff, it's not that I'd feel awkward. It's that my mom put it once. She tried watching one of my videos, and she said, like, every time I said something or changed a subject to a new topic, she kept wanting to reply, but then I would just start talking about something different, and then she'd forget what she wanted to say, and she said it was just the most frustrating hour of her life because she kept wanting to pause the video and say, "Oh yeah, Sarah, and remember blah blah blah," or "Oh, but what about blah blah blah," or "Well, you know what, I kind of disagree, I think blah blah blah." But when it's a one-sided conversation like this on YouTube, unless you're a fast typer who enjoys typing and you can pause it and put it in the comments, there's no real way to reply. So if you've got a relationship with somebody where you talk on a casual basis all the time, trying to watch one of their videos where you're basically being discoursed to could be super annoying. And that's what I mean when I say none of my family watch my videos, because we just talk to each other instead. I should show you another thing about Saraswati. Um, when I was in India, one of the coolest things I saw, one of my friends from Bangalore, um, she showed me her school books as an example of how living with the deities is integrated into just every aspect of a Hindu life. Like people who are truly believing devotional kinds of Hindus. It came up in conversation because she had never gone outside of India. She hadn't really traveled the world. And I told her that, like, she had picked me up from the airport when I landed. And I was spending the night at her apartment before going to the ashram. Um, so I told her that one of the things I love about stepping out of the airport in India is that, you get off the plane and you get into the arrival section, and the first thing you see are deities. Like, back then, the Bengaluru International Airport had this gorgeous Carnatic art display. So as soon as you got into the international arrivals section, there was basically like a little miniature temple set up along the path that you take to get from your gate through the immigration. So when you're waiting to get your passport checked, instead of looking at gray walls or at, whatever advertisements or posters you would normally see, like in the Calgary airport, which I hate landing in because it's all animal torture on the walls. They're stupid, disgusting, archaic, outdated stampede bullshit. So in India, what I love, okay, the moment you get off your plane, you see temples. The moment you get into a cab, if you have a Hindu taxi driver, there's like a little dashboard temple. It's so hard to put into words what it's like in India, that there are temples everywhere. Like every street corner has a shrine to Ganesha, and every car has images of deities on their bumpers as bumper stickers or as little dashboard temples, prayer beads hanging from the rearview mirrors. Like wherever you look, there are signs of divinity. And in North America, we don't have that. In North America, wherever we look, there are signs of branding. Billboards for fast food chains, or shopping centers and stuff. Like wherever we look, we see signs of capitalism. But in India, wherever you look, there are signs of temples. And I like that. So she showed me her school books. And what was so cool was on the inside cover of each of her textbooks, she had a picture of Saraswati. So I decided to emulate that in my journal. And I only thought of it recently. Like, I've kind of put things in my journal that, yeah, cat butts. Things that inspire me, like gemstones and my favorite place in the world, Waterton Lakes National Park. So I bought this postcard, painted by a local artist because I love supporting local artists. It didn't come with this stamp. I glued this stamp to it because I saw a cougar once in Waterton Lake. And when I was a little girl, my granddad and grandmom and I went on a road trip to Vancouver together. And as we were driving through the mountains, my granddad made up stories for me about Jessie Cougar. He started telling me about, he just made it up. My granddad was amazing like that. I don't think I've really told you guys much about him in any of my videos, but he was the director of curriculum and the superintendent of my local school district. So when I went to school, my granddad was like the head honcho of the school board. But his training, he really had a passion for early childhood education. And so the man knew how to tell a story that a child's mind would just play with. So he knew how to make up characters. And so yeah, Jessie Cougar was kind of like a lifelong symbol for me of my granddad as a storyteller and as the patriarch of the family I was born into. So I put this here, kind of like a little Jessie Cougar. But yeah, I decided, you see I've got Frida Kahlo because I admire her as a pioneer of women being respected as actual artists in the art community. Tucked under here, I've got something I cut out of a magazine of Billie Eilish, and I don't even really like her music, to be honest. I would never listen to her music. It's not my thing. I'm old school. I like Rush. I like Heart. I like kind of classic rock, but I love the way she and her mom talk about veganism and animal rights, and that's why I've stuck her picture here. But yeah, I have this postcard of Saraswati that I bought in India, and it still smells like incense. It's so amazing because I bought this like 9 years ago when I first traveled India, and it, to this day, it smells like the temple where I bought it. I wish I could just waft that fragrance to you through the camera. Like, if this was smell-o-vision, you would be smelling hints of sandalwood and incense. It's so amazing. But yeah, I decided to keep this in the front of my journal. And I only thought of it after I already collaged everything else down, so I didn't really get a chance to glue it in place, but I keep her so that she's peeking up from behind this Waterton postcard. I should show you the other stuff I've got in here. I tacked down my P.O. Box address, which I decided to get a P.O. Box address for my Etsy business just because I felt uneasy about the fact that, like, when I started selling jewelry once again, I was getting tons of death threats from brainwashed members of the Nityananda cult. So I kind of didn't want my physical residence address to be out there just in case, just in case one of them decided to act on that, crazy instruction they were given to destroy anybody who's against their cult leader. And yeah, I tacked it down just so I'd remember it. I'm the type of person, I'll get a new phone and I will forget my phone number and not have it written down anywhere. and lost the receipt, and so like have no way of giving it out to people. True story, that's actually happened. Um, I guess we're doing this. I guess I'm giving you a tour of my cover of my journal here. This beautiful image, it's behind an origami paper that's got kind of a pattern on it, so it's hard to see. I bought this in Glastonbury in England, and it's an image of, yeah, sorry about that grid pattern. I don't want to peel up this washi tape because it took me forever to stick it down in a way that I was happy with it. But it's an image of the full moon over a circle of stones. Like, Stonehenge is not the only megalithic stone circle in Great Britain. There are tons of them. And yeah, I was blessed enough to hug the stones in Avebury and to go right up to Stonehenge, like as far as you're allowed to go as a tourist. You know, to climb the Tor in Glastonbury. That was all thanks to my friend Alexandra, who planned like the ultimate 2-day tour of sacred mystical England. Whenever I've traveled the world, like India, England, wherever I've gone, I've always had like a limited amount of carry-on space because I'm too fucking cheap to pay for the additional baggage fees. So I'm always mindful of, I've always been on a budget. I'm not a wealthy person. Like, I make enough to live, but not much beyond that. So it's not like I have an unlimited budget for stuff. So I'm always mindful of not overspending, and I'm also mindful of not having an overweight suitcase, because it happened to me once where I bought some crystals and stuff, and as you know, rocks are heavy, and I bought books. And so when I tried to come back with those rocks and those books, I had to pay like $250 extra as the overweight luggage fee. And I decided never again. So the only souvenir I buy anywhere, even Waterton, like even on little local road trips, the only souvenir I buy are postcards, because they're small, they're inexpensive, they're lightweight, they pack easily. And yeah, when you see a postcard from a place you've been, you remember that place, you see it again, you feel the beauty of it. This postcard here, oops, that Kandinsky print is my favorite, one of my favorite souvenirs, because I just love Kandinsky's art and his spiritual philosophy of abstract art. I bought that at the Museum of Modern Art. Not museum, the Tate Modern, also in England. Yeah, then I've got my sweet little Nikola Tesla quote here about crystals. This came up, I forget what I was watching, but it was in a documentary about something. And I just love the fact that Nikola Tesla said it, so I wrote it in here. We may not understand the growth of a crystal, but nonetheless it is a living being. And I mean, Nikola Tesla was just such a super genius that if he sees that, I think we should take note. Anyway, I should show you in the back of this too. There's another souvenir postcard of London. And like, this is how cheap I am. Not only do I restrict my souvenir budget just to postcards, but also if there's like 15 different postcards available, instead of buying one of each of the images I like, I'll buy the one that has all the pictures together in one card. So I glued that down and made it into a pocket where I can keep other stuff, like this other picture of Saraswati. I'm thinking of making a journal for my Etsy shop using all the duplicates. Like some of these, this isn't a postcard. This is like, you can't really tell. I mean, it has the image of a postcard, but I would never send this in the mail because it's flimsy. It's like a sheet of paper. It's not even laminated. It is very fragile. But I've been thinking of making a journal using all the different, all the doubles. There's another one I bought. This I bought at the Victoria and Albert Museum. I loved the fact that, like in India, the Agora tradition, the group of really strict Shaivite Hindus who they take something even beyond a monastic vow, where they'll dig up from the Ganga riverbed a skull. Like they'll just go digging until they find a skull. And for the rest of their lives, they won't eat or drink anything unless it's offered to them inside that skull, as a way of a tapas, like a renunciation of worldly pleasure and preference, and to just take themselves beyond living to satisfy the physical body, and instead using the physical body as a way to connect with eternity. And I loved that this painter, like from Western history, I think this painting is called something like Vanity. What is it? Still Life, an allegory of the vanities of human life. That spirit of the Agora was also captured by a mystic, by an artist in England. So I bought it as a souvenir of that, but it's not necessarily. I'm not that into the macabre, and I wouldn't take a path of Agora. I'm more of an artist than a renunciate. But I decided to keep that little souvenir in here as well. Boy, this video is all over the place, right? I was actually going to make the topic for today a topic about feminism, because I watched the movie called The Glorias, and it's about all the different phases in the life of Gloria Steinem. And that movie had such a profound impact on me. Like for the next couple of days, all I could think about was feminism. And how disgusted I was with myself that I didn't know anything about Gloria Steinem before seeing that movie. I had no idea that her passion for women's rights, and her passion for human rights, and her passion for journalism, and her passion for activism, I had no idea that all of that came from a trip to India in her youth. And so the movie starts with her, spoiler alert, by the way, I'm going to tell you what happens in this movie. So if you don't want to hear it, just flip ahead about, 5 minutes. But yeah, the movie starts and she's sitting in a car looking out the window. You know when you're a passenger in a car and it's kind of dark out, so when you look at the window, you see your reflection on the glass, and then if you focus, it's like you're looking at a mirror, and then if you let your eyes relax focus, you're looking at the view again. I used to play with that a lot on road trips when I was a kid, like shifting my focus from the reflection to the view outside and back again. Forget when I was a kid, I still do that. And I did that a lot when I was in India, because a lot of the traveling I did, again on a budget, like the first time I traveled India in 2010 with a couple of my friends, each of us had like a budget of about, I think we had like $300 each. So we couldn't afford to be flying to all the different cities, so we took the train. And not like a private car, but like with the locals. We picked the AC class. I think they call it second class AC. But anyway, a lot of the travel that we did to save money, this is how we were all like in our early 20s too. To save money so we wouldn't have to pay hotel fees, we would travel on the overnight train, and so we would sleep on the train, and then when we arrived in the next city, we were refreshed, we would do our sightseeing, and then when it was nighttime, time to sleep again, instead of getting a hotel, we would hop right onto the next train and sleep for the night on the train, and so on. So whenever it was my turn to get the seat with the window, I would do that. I would gaze out the window, see my reflection, and I really made a solid effort to record that in my memory. To Like, I remember at one point looking out the window and seeing these ancient temples. It was on our way from Madras, from Chennai. Um, we kind of went up the coast from Chennai to Calcutta. It's not really along the coast, but like if you go far to the east from there, you'd eventually hit the Bay of Bengal. So we had been in Pondicherry. That was one of my favorite places. I would go back there and spend a week. It's like this anomaly of an Indian city where people speak French, and there are cool French cafes superimposed with all this like incredibly cool new agey stuff created by the followers of Aurobindo. It's an awesome place. We didn't stay at Aurobindo's Oroville, but we went there for a day, and it was really, really cool. I would totally go there again. So yeah, we took a train from Pondicherry and then went up, not from Chennai, that's my bad. So for part of the train journey, there was like the Bay of Bengal visible in the far distance, and we took that up to Calcutta, from Calcutta to Varanasi, from Varanasi to Agra, where we went to Vrindavan. We basically did a temple tour, so we hit all the really significant temples and pilgrimage places. Not all of them, I should say as many as we could with our budget and with our 3-week restriction. I think it was 3 weeks until my flight back to Canada when we started that journey. Oh yeah, I had to take a moment to remember, where was I going with this? So yeah, I picked up tons of postcards along that journey. And my favorite ones I would buy 2 of instead of just 1. So I'm thinking of making, like I said, a journal for my newer Etsy shop, The Art of Gems Stationery, where I've got all those stickers I showed you earlier. I'm thinking of making a journal using all my duplicates. And where I was going with that, this movie, The Glorias, about Gloria Steinem, the device they used to kind of tie together the different eras of her life was something I found so profoundly relatable. Like I could see myself in her when she's sitting in a car, I think in New York, or no, she's on a train going from New York to a reserve. Some of her First Nations friends. So she's on her way, like, through this American landscape, gazing at her reflection, and suddenly, like, it fades into a reflection of a much younger face, and she's gazing out a window at India. And it's like, when I saw that on screen, it reminded me of, like, the last time I was on a road trip to Waterton Lakes National Park, and I saw my reflection in the glass of the car window and kind of had a flashback to seeing a reflection of my face in a window looking out at the Meenakshi Madurai temple, or Rishikesh in the Himalayas. Anyway, and that's just the beginning of the movie. The way throughout the entire thing, they show the life story of this powerful woman who did what she wanted to do, even in a time when women weren't allowed to do what they wanted to do. It made me so aware of how far women have come since the 1960s in a way that I've never thought about before. And this is why I said I was like mad at myself. Like, how did I not know this? That, you know, up until the 1960s, when Gloria Steinem kind of led this feminist movement, well, was one of the leaders of this feminist movement, a woman wasn't allowed to rent an apartment by herself. She needed the permission of her father or her husband to rent an apartment. And I was thinking, like, I would have been fucked if I was alive back then, because I'm an only child of a single mother, so there's no father to give permission for me to rent a place. Uh, any guy I've ever dated has been a dud. Like, I haven't, I couldn't, I don't think I'm the type who can be in a relationship because I'm so fulfilled with my own mental journey of learning and creating in life that I just don't feel like I could be tied to another one person. So forget the idea of having a husband's permission. Like, how the hell would a single woman without a father have even lived back then? And that was kind of the point of the movie was that they couldn't. Like, it was a man's world. And I mean, the toxic view of women even to this day in a lot of media, like, holy shit, guys, watch Bombshells, the story of all the women who were sexually harassed by the Fox News assholes. We still live in a society where women are kind of seen as secondary. Like, I could give you examples from my own life, from my friends' lives, from the lives of women I've known. A lady I used to work with at DKNY had to flee Iran because her well established, politically powerful husband was beating the shit out of her, leaving her black and blue. Um, and she couldn't leave the country because he wouldn't give permission for her to leave the country. She had to flee as a refugee. She was well off, living in pretty much a palace, like treated like a princess. Um, by the way, you do not want to be treated like a Middle Eastern princess. Um, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. But, like, I remember kind of sitting and listening to her in the break room when we worked together, and the legal red tape she had to maneuver around to get out of Iran, to flee that abusive husband. If she ever sets foot in that country again, he and his henchmen and their relatives will literally kill her. It's crazy. Like, I think of the 1950s and 60s in North America, the way women were treated. Women still have it that bad in some parts of the world, is what I'm saying here. And for some reason, these are things I used to hear, but it's like it would go in one ear, out the other. I wouldn't really internalize it and think about it and ponder it. I would just kind of like hear it and then dismiss it because it's not really applicable to my life. But somehow seeing this movie, The Glorias, and she gives an interview with this man, this fucking bastard asshole of a man, who was like a popular TV show host at the time. And he asks her, why didn't you marry? Do you regret not having kids? Like, all the typical shit people ask a woman if they don't understand how she can feel fulfilled in her life without having a man and a baby. Like, as if we're just these biological production houses and that's all we exist for. And so she gave a really articulate, beautiful answer about how her work fulfills her, and her journalism fulfills her, and her activism fulfills her. And then later they show a scene where she's sitting in a hotel room and she turns on the television and there's this asshole who interviewed her. And he's talking about her. And he says, Gloria Steinem speaks with such a blah, 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 that blah, blah, blah. And then he finally says, I didn't know whether I wanted to kiss her or hit her. And for some reason, that was the line that brought it home to me so strongly of when people talk about feminism and women's rights and women's liberation and what the feminists were fighting for, I finally got it. Like, in today's world, barring, of course, this soon-to-be disempowered, unfortunate abomination of an American president, Um, other than that, creep of a person, most men today can't get away with saying misogynistic bullshit about women. And like, thanks to the Me Too movement, I think Rose McGowan is one of my heroes. Like, Leah Remini is one of my heroes. Now Gloria Steinem, she's like on the top of my heroes list. Like I said, if you haven't seen this movie, if you're female, watch it. If you're male and you get annoyed by feminists, it should be required viewing. You should know that human beings who are in all capacities except for maybe physical height and physical strength, but in many ways they are your superiors, in many ways they are your equals, and only in some physical ways they might be your inferiors. But how people who are no less human than you have been treated as your chattel, as your property, as your subservience. Find out why women are feminists. Watch that movie. That should be like my recommended viewing. Before you leave a comment about this, if you're a dude and you're starting to type, well, they're the man haters, well, it is your biological role to have a baby. Like, before you start, my cats are looking at me like, what's wrong? Because I never use that voice. It's okay. It's okay, kitty. That's funny. My cats were worried about me, I think, when I started talking like that. Yeah, before you leave a whiny, wimpy man comment trying to defend the abhorrent treatment of women, watch that movie. Just see why I felt feminism would be an important topic for a video. Maybe we'll make that my next video. And I see the world through a lens of veganism. Again, my art is matching my topic. I've got all these V's for vegan as I talk about this. But I kind of see the world through the context of, if somebody is vegan, they understand that animals exist in order to enjoy their lives and to be a part of nature, not to be murdered for the greedy taste pleasure of human beings who would actually be healthier on plant-based diets. Like, people who are vegan get that. They understand. It's not that we value the lives of animals more than the lives of people. It's that we value all lives, and we value the lives of animals more than we value the snack of people, or the right of people to commit murder. Like, if you met a person on like an as yet undiscovered little tribe living somewhere on an island of cannibals, and that person was like literally about to slit your throat and hang you upside down and bleed you out and then boil and eat you, would you be like, well, it's your right as a cannibal to enjoy me as a meal? No, you'd be fucking fighting for your life and just terribly angry that such an atrocity could even exist, where people would murder each other when there's tons of other shit they could be eating instead, like root vegetables and beans and fruits and nuts and seeds, and I go on. But for some reason, there are still idiots out there who try to defend the consumption of animal products as if it's a personal choice. And it's like, yeah, it's a choice to be a rapist, to forcibly impregnate animals using metal devices filled with the semen. It's not even a natural conception. These animals are raped, they are enslaved, they are abused. And finally, when their miserable lives of mistreatment at the hands of humans are over, humans kill them. So I see the world through that lens. Like, if I meet somebody and they're vegan, I feel an innate kinship. Like, even somebody like Teal Swan, who I've criticized for her cult-like spiritual stylings and the way she kind of, not kind of, the way she speaks as if she's the ultimate of everything, telling people she's like the spiritual catalyst. Having left a cult, I can see the writing on the wall of her YouTube channel that, yeah, she is a cult leader. Even though I criticize her pretty harshly about that, I do still feel a certain level of kinship in that she's vegan. So she gets this. Um, so, anyway, throughout the whole movie, The Glorias, the one thing that I didn't quite get was that, like, Gloria Steinem seems so enlightened as to the plight of equality. She was an anti racist back when kind of the tapestry of American culture was woven with racism. Um, she volunteered her services to take down notes of meetings for different tribal people of the First Nations community. Like she recognized their plight for self-governance and understood where they were coming from, even at a time when movies would still show that cowboys versus Indians, kind of making it look as if the white people who stole the land were the good guys. Like, she was able to evolve past that. She had black friends at a time when, again, like, that disparity of understanding where white people still felt superior, even though there was no longer slavery. There was still a sort of mental prison or a mental line drawn where equality just couldn't be reached. She was able to overcome that. And I kept thinking, like, it's so weird that she's not vegan. Like, how can she understand this but not that, you know? So I Googled it afterwards, and of course she's gone veg. I don't know how recently. And again, that's part of the reason I add her to my list of heroes, that, yeah, she did also make that connection too. And I think that, like, activists are a certain type of people. Like, some people, they'll hear about how badly animals are treated, and their response will be, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And they'll eat the meat, and they'll buy the dairy, and they'll buy the eggs, and they'll say, well, that's, this animal would have been abused whether I eat it or not, because it's already done. And so they will perpetuate that system of injustice, because supply and demand, like, as long as people are buying those products in the grocery store, animals will continue to be enslaved and murdered to fulfill that demand. And I think people who go vegan and vegetarian, when they hear how badly animals are treated, how much suffering goes into that so-called food in air quotes, because it's corpses and it's lactations meant to feed a baby, or it's eggs. It's like the chicken's period. You're basically eating the menstrual cycle if you're eating an egg, but an ill-gotten one, like one where the animal is terribly abused, and when she no longer produces eggs, she's slaughtered to make chicken. When a vegan or when an activist-minded person finds out about that, instead of just shrugging their shoulders and saying, well, that sucks, but if that's what's happening, nothing I can do about it, and to keep eating that stuff, an activist-minded person will understand that there's a collective agreement made by humans that at this point in time says that's okay. But when you know in your heart that it's not okay, instead of being defeatist and, surrendering to the group think or to the herd mentality that's doing this atrocious thing, you make a conscious decision to change your habits and to start influencing the people you can, with hopes that eventually it'll change the world. And in the 1960s, people probably couldn't conceive of the fact that one day a single woman who is a bastard daughter of a single mother, who doesn't have a father, who doesn't have a husband, can earn a living for herself and be self-employed and rent her own place with no man's permission. That would have been unthinkable back then, and yet the world has changed for the better in the favor of women. Um, for the better for a lot of people who were once really disenfranchised. And we're still working on it. I wouldn't say the world is now perfectly equal. Look at how many black men are murdered by police officers just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's still a huge change that has yet to occur. But I think as a society, at least we're moving in the right direction now. The discourse is happening openly. And I really think global veganism is an inevitable. In the Roman times, when they would throw slaves into a gladiator pit with weapons and force them, last man standing is literally the last man alive, like they would fight to the death. Sure, we still have things like MMA or boxing or like organized sports, but it's not the same kind of a blood sport anymore. We see that as something our society has evolved away from, right? People are no longer paying money to go watch other people murder each other as an accepted social thing. And I think eventually people are also going to stop paying other people to murder animals so that they can eat their bodies, when I think enough of us have proven it's possible to be perfectly healthy on an entirely cruelty-free diet, plant-based, vegan, whatever word you want to put to it. Anyway, like I said, this video has gone all kinds of different directions. I've gotten so distracted by talking that I forgot to even work on this drawing, so I'll probably finish this piece off camera. But yeah, let me know if you want to talk about this further. I've got interesting stories that like I told my mom last Sunday about watching this movie and just how I didn't realize how different the world is for women now compared to the 60s. And she told me some stories that are just incredible. I would love to share, but it's already been an hour and 36 minutes and it's getting extremely uncomfortable in this hot seat. You can tell by my picture here that the sun is beating in the window, but my building heat is centralized. I have no way of controlling the temperature in my place, so the heat is on, and I'm now sitting in direct sunlight, and all my windows are closed, so I've got to get up and get some fresh air into here and move to a shady spot. So I'm going to end today's video now, but I think I'm going to put feminism and veganism on a back burner for a future video. If you have anything you want to add to that discussion, any personal experiences relating to either that you'd like me to share, you're welcome to leave them in a comment, and I'll read those comments out when I cover this in a more, fully dedicated video just to this. Or if you have any questions or any other reading suggestions or movie suggestions, let me know. I'm kind of keen to do some more research about this topic too before I talk about it. Specifically women, if you have experiences or stories that you'd like to share about this. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in upcoming videos. This piece here that I made, it's still for sale in my shop, The Art of Gems, as are all the Moldavite pieces I showed you. All those stickers that I showed you are in my new shop, Art of Gems Stationery. I'll put links to both of those Etsy shops in my video description because that's how I make a living. So if you like what I do and you want to show some support or maybe get some handmade gifts for your friends and family for Christmas or for yourself or whatever it might be, I really appreciate your purchases. That's my bread and peanut butter. That's my living. So thank you to all of those of you who do. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. I look forward to reading most of your comments. Much love. We'll see you next time. Bye.